Hello, Nevada Realtors. Chris Bishop here, your host for It's Not Soup Yet, and I'm joined today by our very own Keith Lynam, our Legislative Chairman. If you're wondering where my counterpart Tom Blanchard is, he's actually on an airplane to go to Carson City to do the Lord's work up there for all Nevada Realtors. Hey, Keith, thanks for being here today. I appreciate it. Let's start
Absolutely.
let's start the conversation off with fee-based budgets.
Fee-based budget. This is something that we think is time. We're one of the few agencies that do not control their own budgeting. We put in upwards of about $6 million over the 2-year period. We get about $4 million back, rough numbers, and so we want to make sure we're what's called a fee-based budget, which means the money we put in, we get to budget, we get to create the budgets and all that. We still will have a contribution to the general fund of about $2 million every $1 million a year, and we're fine with that. But we want to make sure that we have a little more control over reserves and things like that. So
just to be clear, this is SB 288. You and the Legislative Committee have been working with the Real Estate Administration for multiple sessions to get this on, and unfortunately, when the process was happening with shortfalls in the budget, fee-based budgets don't really hit home with a lot of legislators when they're looking for money, because what happens, from my understanding right now, is that money is paid through the Real Estate Division. All of the funding goes into the general budget, and then the Real Estate Division has to carve out what they need as far as their budget to operate. And so that's why we've seen things like, less auditors to look at file cases, less enforcement officers. And so this would help with them to be able to operate and provide the support that they really need to provide to all Nevada licensees. Is that correct?
yeah, absolutely. No Northern Nevada office at all. So if a broker has an issue from the north or the rules, they've got to come and fly down to Vegas, which is unfortunate. You're right. It's a consumer protection. There's not enough people to investigate those things that go wrong in our industry. We're fortunate that we've got a director. Sharath is an amazing partner with our industry. He is still the shepherd. He's still tough on what he does, but he works with us and sharp. And so we have had in the past directors that weren't, and we were not able to work this thing through. But with Sharath we are, and we'll get there this time. Last time was an unfortunate deal, but we'll get it done this time. I'm confident.
For sure. And so one of the things that we talked about in the beginning of these videos was that we're seeing a lot of landlord-tenant provisions, of course, with the COVID crisis and the things that happen with rent and all the things that we saw, with non-evictions and things like that. We have AB 298, which comes out with a number of landlord-tenant provisions. But one of the interesting ones I saw in here is that it requires that a lease highlight all of the expenses that a tenant would or could incur, which I think that, most of our leases that the association provides or things like that, they absolutely do. I know it's the whole first page. But one of the other items is, you must highlight all of the tenant's rights under the law. And so that's an interesting statement. There are a number of things the tenant has the right to that may not be highlighted as clearly in the lease. And so this would require that happen. Anything you want to add to that you're seeing as far as any of coming out for tenant landlord issues?
Yeah, a couple of things. We asked the HOA, the associations, a few sessions ago, that they put on one sheet all fees that they're charging. So we felt that was appropriate for them. We probably feel it's appropriate for our property managers to do the same. Most of the property managers that we've talked to already do that. It makes things so much easier, so much simpler to say, look, this is the fee. It's right there on this sheet. You've signed it. You know what it is, and get it done that way. So that's on the fee structure. On the other one, what we're going to, at least what I've suggested we do, is have the state prescribe a form. Because I don't know about you, Chris. I don't know all the rights that a tenant has. I don't know all the rights a landlord has. So before we put our property managers at risk of leaving something out, we want to make sure that form is uniform, and so everybody's getting the same information, just like our duties owed, just like our forms that we put to the association. We want to make sure that those things are gone through that. So we think we're going to get there on that one.
So Keith, this really reminds me of the same conversation that we had about the real estate disclosure guide, where the idea was to provide a document that highlights all of the different disclosures that a real estate professional could provide to a client. And so now we have that 19-page document that explains what every single disclosure is, what it means, and what the rights of the buyer or seller are under it. And so it sounds like this would be the same idea for tenants, to give them an idea. Hopefully it's not called the tenant disclosure guide. If it is, I'm patenting that right now, and so they'll owe me $1 for every one of them that comes out. That makes sense.
Good luck with that. Yeah, and I think it makes sense. It goes back to the same thing of, here's what you're right, because let's face it, some tenants think they have rights that aren't bestowed upon them, and
one
so
episode
they're
of Judge Judy makes a difference.
Amen. Right? Exactly. So I think it's going to help everybody clarify what they can and can't do, and what's provided them by law. Exactly.
So one of the provisions in AB 298 is an interesting one. I just want to read this off at the bottom. It would also prevent landlords from increasing rent more than 10% if the tenant is 62 years or older or more, or relies on payments received through Social Security. And I think that's interesting because, of course, if you're at a set amount at Social Security and you get a cost of income raise or something like that, and we've seen in the past where, rents were low to the pace of the marketplace. And so this would cap a landlord's ability to raise that rent more than 10% in those provisions. I find it very cool that the draft sponsor of the bill has reached out to Nevada Realtors to help with amended language. And so another great example of legislators that are working with the Realtor Association to make things work versus just putting it out there and trying to pass something without their input.
Assemblywoman Howdegi has done an amazing job on working with us. And this goes back to what we have said all along, that working with those that are in an elected position is much better than being right in your mind. Sure. Supporting those that don't win. This has given us the opportunity to work with Assemblywoman, who is the majority leader, on crafting a bill that is acceptable, not only acceptable, something that we can support. We are put in a position where we're actually going to help her define who the vulnerable population is. So we're helping write that so that it's unharmful as it is, as it can be. There is some stuff, and I know we talked about it just a little while ago, about things that are coming down the pike that just got released yesterday that are harmful, capping at 5%. Everybody. I mean, so there are things that we are there. So, but we're in a position that we can say, look, we're supporting this. Yeah. This is what is reasonable. This is what the market will allow, because most people don't charge more than 10%. Our clients, our people that we're representing, aren't charging more than 10%. So this just shows that what we have done, whether you agree or not, and some don't, is working, and it's a benefit to our Nevada homeowners.
Absolutely. So last but certainly not least, we have another Realtor Champion highlight at the bottom for Assemblywoman Alexis Hansen from Assembly District 32, someone that we've had a good communication line with for many years, thanks to the PAC and their efforts. And so she introduced a number of bills, but I think what's interesting to also note on these spotlights is they talk about the committees that these different legislators sit on, and she sits on Judiciary, which is a huge realtor issue committee that we see a lot of things go through. We saw that happen over the pandemic session before. And she also sits on the Natural Resources Committee. Now, I believe that I'm a natural resource for the realtor community, but I don't think it falls into the same guidelines. But definitely, it's wonderful to have realtor champions that are sitting in those committees when those bills are heard. And I'm thankful that we have her on our side.
First of all, we're not going to just gloss over that natural resource comment. The reason Tom's not here is we dropped the harassment possibilities by a third, and then you throw the natural resource thing out there. That's good. We're almost done. We're almost out of it, Chris.
I'm sorry. So, Keith, you made the comment earlier that some of these bills, just like we make the soup context every time, the flavor may not be there, but these legislators are working with us. I want to give a shout out to Rocky Finseth and Carrera, Nevada, and their entire team that's up there right now slaving away to make sense of these bills. And as you mentioned, Keith, you have a number of bill drafts that just got dropped, and a number of bills that are coming out of committees with changes. And so there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and thankful for all those that are doing it.
Yeah, before we go, I wanted to bring up one thing, Chris, before we go. I didn't
Yeah.
mean to cut you off, but because it falls right in there. Last night there was today being Wednesday, so last night there was a forum up there with the legislative leaders, the majority leaders and the minority leaders, that John Ralston, the Nevada Independent, put on there. And there was a question, literally a question saying, because of the influence that the realtors have in the building, is it an undue influence over housing? The Speaker of the House said, no, it's not. We have a great working relationship, and a lot of that goes to Rocky and Janie. You're absolutely right. They're two of the most resource-filled people in that building, and they are respected, and we are the better for that. And so I think that's really important when we talk about housing, when we talk about affordable housing, all those things, the influence that we have. We're doing things right, and we should all be very, very, very proud of that.
And of course, we'd be remiss if we did not bring up the hard work of Teresa McKee in positioning Nevada Realtors the way that she has with her leadership teams and the executive team and the board of directors. And of course, Tiffany, thanks for reviewing all of these bills when it comes to real estate. But you know, I'm always surprised at the amount of extra work this adds on at every session, on top of everything else they have to do to operate the association. So definitely want to thank them. And last but not least, I want to draw your attention to the right side of the advocate, where we highlight those who have stepped up and become major investors in our association. I want to point out that on many of these, you're going to see that some of these filled out a pledge card, others have made their full contribution. We're not saying that you have to give all of this money today, right now, but if you care about practicing real estate, if you care about preserving your industry, these individuals are the ones helping preserve it. And we couldn't do what we do and have the ability to be able to do what we do without their support. And so thank you to all of them. And if you want to become a member of this group on the right-hand side of the advocate, please reach out to your local association and invest your dollars in the political survival fund so that we can continue to operate as we do.
Absolutely. I'm hopping on a plane here. I'm following the Blanchard up there later on this afternoon, and our event tonight is going to be with legislators, and they will be thanking us for those investments in their campaign and the influence that we have in that building. So we're very proud of what Teresa and Tiffany, and I'll reserve comment because Teresa's supposed to pick me up tonight, so we'll tune in next week to see if she did or not.
Well, it goes without saying, you know, thank you guys for all you're doing, safe travels. And guys, remember, no matter what happens, no matter where we're at, it's not soup yet.
Amen, brother.